Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first panel of the Regional Housing Strategy Speaker Series. We're really glad that you're here. I'm William Murdoch. I'm the Executive Director of the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. You all know us as MORPC. If you don't know MORPC, we're the Regional Council for Central Ohio. We do everything from planning for growth, working with our communities on policy and transportation, energy, sustainability, and of course, housing. And we're glad to be with you today. First, I want to do two thank yous. First, thanks to everybody who's interested in housing in Central Ohio. This is a kickoff to a series that will really give you some new insights, we hope, and really keep the conversation going on what's such an important issue. And second, I want to thank the Columbus Foundation because they've been a gracious supporter of the regional housing strategy, but also of the speaker series. And we can't do this work without their support. So thank you to them as well. Well, so let's get started. Housing is a top priority for communities here in Central Ohio, as well as nationwide, and it's easy to understand why. We know this story. Supply is limited, rental rates and home sale prices only continue to climb. Many residents are facing eviction or foreclosure due to the economic crisis or COVID-19. And COVID-19 has very much put a spotlight on clear, deep dividing lines in our communities across the region. Many of our housing challenges are disproportionately, sometimes exclusively experienced by households of color and lower income households. And these are just a few of the urgent housing concerns facing our region and our communities. And we think now is the right time to come together to continue to push for solutions to address the housing crisis. So last year, as many of you were involved, MORPC worked together with our members and about 50 partner organizations to develop a regional housing strategy for Central Ohio. We have over 100 recommendations to guide investments, policy decisions, as well as a regional collaborative approach. This regional housing strategy envisions a future for Central Ohio where growth and recovery coming out of the pandemic could help create more housing equity among Central Ohioans, not less. Housing, where it's built, where it's maintained, who it's for, how it's priced. We really think housing can be a platform for this vision. Achieving this is not going to be easy. We're all going to have to keep collaborating. We're going to have to look to our leaders for bold solutions and innovation. And we know that you're all with us on this journey. At MORPC, we're going to continue to work with you, listen to our members, our community members, our partners, to understand how we can do more as collaborators to support innovators and also to advocate for that bold leadership we're going to need. We're going to do our part to ensure Central Ohio is on this path. MORPC is going to continue to be champions for your work and to lift up all of the different nonprofits and business partners who are working so hard to try to advance solutions in this. So we hope you see us as that partner and that collaborator to get this done. So all of this is why we're proud today to be kicking off a housing speaker series. The speaker series is designed to showcase innovative solutions from broad leaders across the country. And we have the chance to hear from a few of those leaders today. That's why you're here. Our panelists are all about innovation in development. They're going to show us how the housing market's stepping up to the plate with unique and scalable ideas. They're challenging the status quo of housing design. They're expanding options for supply. They're working on affordability and doing so across the nation. And I'm very excited for us to kick off this series on this topic. So who better to moderate today's session than MORPC's own Director of Residential Services and a well-known face in the housing community here in Central Ohio because he's accomplished quite a bit, and that's Robert Williams. So thank you again for being here. Robert, I'm going to turn it over to you. So thanks again.
Thank you, William, for the introduction. For someone who has been immersed in affordable housing development for the better part of the last 15 years, I'm super excited to be moderating this regional housing strategy speaker series. In the housing development world, modular and manufactured housing is always a lightning rod for discussion, and this is a great opportunity for education and engagement. Before I introduce the first speaker, I wanted to give a shout out and thanks to Kirsten Carr and Jennifer Knoll and the rest of the planning and sustainability team for putting this together. Please feel free to leave any questions or comments directly on YouTube or poll everywhere. So now for our first presenter, he is CEO Emeritus for Next Steps Homes, which focuses on putting sustainable ownership within reach for all, with an emphasis on manufactured housing, consumer education, affordability, and energy efficiency. He is currently the president and CEO of Lane Associates, which focuses on leveraging factory-built housing and affordable housing programs. Prior to Next Step, our speaker served as Vice President of Marketing at Clayton Homes, the nation's largest home builder. He also holds a BA in Economics, an MBA from Case Western Reserve, and recently graduated from Harvard's Achieving Excellence in Community Development program. Please welcome Chris Nicely.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you for allowing me to be a part of this very important discussion and conversation that we're about to have. So you should see on your screen title slide, Battling Stereotypes in Today's HUD Code Housing. And that's really what we're going to be challenging each of us with as we speak and discuss the topic of affordable housing throughout the day. I am Chris Nicely with Next Step. We are a national nonprofit network that helps private and nonprofit organizations understand how they can leverage factory-built housing in their affordable housing mission locally, and whether they're municipality, community development, builder-developer, or nonprofit HUD-certified housing counseling agency or other housing organization in the community. With that, as William mentioned at the beginning, this is no new news for us. There is a housing shortage nationwide. In 2018, Freddie Mac and their economics department came and calculated that, in fact, about 3.3 million homes would be required to meet demand. And that was a surprise after the run-up and actually excess inventory after the recession, or during and after the recession. But recently, Fannie Mae and Low Income Housing Coalition stated there's a recognized actual shortage of 7.4 million units in the affordable category. And that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today, opening our minds to new ideas and innovations and recognizing some of the advancements that have been taking place. But before we can do that, we kind of have to level a playing field, understand what we're talking about, understand that not all homes are built the same, and we need to understand what those categories that we talk about all the time represent, what they mean, and how they differ. Many times we categorize all homes built in a factory as a mobile home, but actually mobile homes haven't been built since 1976. They were unregulated in their construction. They were built to no code, and they are no longer being constructed. Many times these homes that were built prior to 76 are seen in the rural countrysides and in the manufactured home communities and the like. But these are no longer part of the discussion. Mobile homes are no longer being made, and they have been replaced by several other options. One of those options are panelized homes. Panelized homes have been around for a very long time, used in a high level by companies like Ryan Homes and Ryland Homes. And these panelized homes will be shipped to the site on a flatbed. They're built to a local building code, local and state building code. They're inspected on site. As you can see, when they're delivered, they're craned into place, and within 24 hours, typically a home will be dried in and ready to start finishing. Sometimes they come with plumbing and wiring already completed, and sometimes that is completed on site. The panelized homes, it's important to understand, is a way to take costs out and to increase the velocity at which homes can be sited and sold. Tiny homes or ADUs are another area. Typically, tiny homes are 400 square feet or less, built to an RV code. However, recently, probably in the last 2 to 3 years, 4 years possibly, ADUs have come in. There's been acceptance of ADUs as they meet the HUD building code. And even now, today, some of the ADU units are upwards to 600, 800 square feet and built to a modular code. So the tiny homes or ADUs built to RV code are not intended for complete and permanent occupation or residency. So when you talk about ADUs and tiny homes, understand what they are, what they can be, how they're built, and what their usage is intended to be. So that's another category that is showing some very interesting promise in the urban settings and subdivision development. Modular home, we hear modular home a lot, prefab, modular, other terms that we talk about it. Modular homes are built to the state and local code. They're specific to a particular site or lot. They have to be approved for that individual site. They're sections, they're built-in sections, and transported to the site 75 to 80% complete. They're crane set on a permanent foundation. That foundation supports a perimeter load, unlike some other homes that we're going to be talking about, and they're craned into place and set on those permanent foundation, and they're constructed in the same facilities that would construct or build a manufactured home. Manufactured home is kind of where we're going to spend a great deal of our time today, talking about what it offers, how it comes into the marketplace, some of the advantages and that type of thing. It's built to a national building code from HUD. It's called the HUD code, building code, and it's inspected by independent third parties at the plant as it's being built. So it does not necessitate a third inspection on site. It is built in a single section unit or a multi-section unit. Multi-section is what you see on your screen now. It is rolled onto a foundation and pier and beam set. So it does not require a crane, thereby reducing that cost. And it is set as you see on this one, it is set and permanently affixed to the ground with an FHA Title II type permanent foundation. And then the surrounding block wall is non-load supporting, but it does give the appearance and the aesthetics of a site-built home. We all know about the affordability gap, and it's rampant in Central Ohio as it is across the nation. Median home prices are well up into the 300s. Manufactured home and land prices are as low as 114. Now these are median prices, so you can imagine there's a wide spectrum of manufactured homes. Manufactured housing chattel, that's home only. Much like you would see in a manufactured home community where the land is leased or rented and the home is placed on that land or lease. Interestingly enough, fewer than 5% of the homes are ever moved or relocated to 95% of the homes. And that's been consistent through the last couple of decades, that a large majority of the homes that are sited never get relocated. But there has been a movement in the last 10, 15 years in manufactured HUD code homes, and that is adopting techniques that will allow the home to assimilate a site-built home on a permanent foundation with a concrete block concrete foundation. The interiors are as up to date as anything that you would see on HGTV or any site builder. The interesting part about this is that it is anywhere between 15 and 25% less expensive to build. And we'll talk about that in a second. And the construction time is half of what it would be for site built. Now, a lot of people will come back and the old stigma that is attached to manufactured homes is one that they don't appreciate. They don't represent building wealth in a family. And FHFA did a study back in 2018, 2017, where they looked at the value and the price index for traditional homes and manufactured homes. And they found the rate of appreciation to be very similar between site-built traditional homes and manufactured homes. So the argument that these do not represent an investment that can appreciate and build wealth for a family is not true. And it's been researched and understood by FHFA and shared with others. So the depreciation and the appreciation is not a question at this point in time. The advantages of manufactured housing is that, and actually any factory-built housing, is that materials are purchased in quantity. For example, Clayton Homes, the largest home builder in the country, they'll build close to 50,000 houses a year. When you go to a lumber mill and they buy direct, they go to a lumber mill and buy lumber for 50,000 houses. They go to a truss company and buy trusses for 50,000 houses, appliance packages for 50,000 houses. They are getting the very best price possible. When at all possible, like lumber, they're buying direct from the source. So they're cutting out the intermediate costs that of distribution and other costs that get kind of put into the final price. If you're in construction or housing development in any way, you understand today skilled labor is becoming much more difficult. There's a shortage of skilled labor. What labor is available is going to the higher price development projects that are out there. With a factory-built home, the labor is hired and trained, and they have full set of benefits, health insurance, retirement, and they have consistent working conditions and work time. So they have a consistent availability of skilled trades. The construction times are shorter to build a house from start to finish. Once the first nail is put in, can take anywhere between 6 and 10 days in the plant to build a complete house ready to be transported to a site. That means when it gets to the site, it's 80% finished. It can be completed on site, put together, put on a foundation, finished on the inside. Then things like garage, carport, driveway, sidewalks, landscaping is all done on a local basis and completed much faster than it would on a traditional site-built construction effort. If you are familiar with construction financing, shorter construction time, it means lower cost on the financing side of that development. This also means faster move-in times. Today, where a few years ago, 10 years ago, a house could sit on the market, days on market. It could sit 80, 90, 120 days on market. Today, when a house goes on the market, it's literally measured in less than a week or a little over a week. So there's the faster move-in times become a reality. The supply starts to increase. And obviously with 80% of the home being built in a factory, it is has very few weather delays. Labor shows up, puts the shingles on the house, whether it's raining or snowing outside, because it's always bright and warm in a manufacturing facility. It's also a smart option. This is a site-built home in my neighborhood here in Dallas, Texas, and this is the waste after the rough-in. And we can see that this will go into landfill. And you can see there's full dimension lumber that'll be wasted, and certainly the scraps. In the manufactured home and a factory built house, materials are purchased many times to size, where you can see this is just one effort of scrap in a site-built situation, and this will probably be twice this much during the entire construction. The waste on building a manufactured home will fill about 2 32-gallon trash cans. With that, too, there's more opportunity to understand the energy envelope and making sure that that's meeting Energy Star regulations. If you're looking to do Energy Star certification, which we certainly recommend, but in homes, they're having programmable thermostats, high efficiency furnaces, low flow shower heads, low VOC paint, and floor coverings using recycled materials. So there's a lot of green aspects as well to a manufactured home. These are a little bit dated, but they can show you the difference in the cost per square foot on a new site-built home versus a existing manufactured home. I'm not suggesting that this is absolute, but I am suggesting that, relatively speaking, the manufactured home that's built in a factory without delay by skilled labor with the same materials being used by a site builder will save anywhere between 15 and 25% over the cost of a site-built home. That's variable, and I'm not one of the people that will make claims of 40, 50% savings. But my claim is that it is less expensive, and if well managed, you can experience those kind of discounts or reduction in costs in housing. Significant components of using manufactured housing in a municipality or an area reduces independence on local skilled trades. That's sometimes good news, sometimes bad news. In an economic situation we're in now where skilled trades are not available, this is good news. Consistent material at lowest cost, flexible design, high value, and higher density in single family detached, wider potential market for entry-level homes. First-time home buyers are finding they can't or don't want to spend $300,000, $350,000 on their first home. This puts it in the range of affordability for them and can present a high-value solution. What's really changed in the whole landscape and environment is the GSEs, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, coming in, looking at manufactured housing under the requirement to duty to serve, and they're offering now revitalized, restructured lending products associated with manufactured housing. They're training appraisers on how to look at this new manufactured housing effort and how to appraise them. They're allowing site-built comps, which is a huge move and a statement of comparability between manufactured housing and site-built, and that's very exciting. Looking at the Fannie Mae effort, Fannie Mae has a new single-family manufactured home lending and financing available. That's something very interesting. Those are real property deals. So in some situations, that can be quite an advantage for affordable housing. They can also make available or access MH Advantage. MH Advantage are for homes like those behind me, like the ones we've been talking about, with as little as 3% down and very competitive rates and competitive 30-year terms. So it is a step to legitimize the consideration of manufactured HUD code homes in the housing development, the housing solution, as you address that on a local basis. Brookings Institute took a look at the land availability in municipalities and came back with identifying that 15% of the land in a municipality could be or has been recognized as vacant, and so that's a significant amount of land. And with that, of course, when you have empty land, you generate as a municipality little or no tax revenue. It reduces the vibrancy, increases blight, increases crime, erodes pride in a community neighborhood, and that's an opportunity for us to not only repopulate the parts of our cities, but repopulate them with products that make the neighborhood proud and represent an affordable housing solution. Doing this in all kinds of, these are some example projects that we've done with organizations throughout the country. In LaGrange, Texas, LaGrange is a town much like Mount Vernon or Mansfield or Worcester or Grove City, and has a need for affordable housing. And this is a project that we did with them, recognizing that. San Bernardino, California, much bigger presence, but it suggests that, in fact, it can be used in an infill basis. St. Petersburg, Florida, New Orleans, Louisiana. I put this up here just to show the flexibility of the exterior elevation as well. And Knoxville, Tennessee, the subdivision possibilities are very exciting. Moorhead, Kentucky, another example. This facility, this subdivision is 15 years old and continues to resell and appraise well above the original purchase price. Why is this important? Well, there's a dire need for housing. There's acute need for affordable housing. Home ownership stabilizes communities, as we all know. It reduces blight and crime, increases tax revenue, increases community pride. With manufactured factory-built housing, skilled labor is available while it's a very short supply on a local level. Materials are increasing every day and maximizing the need for productivity gains in our housing efforts. And factory-built housing is not new. It's been around for decades, and today's manufacturer has to be seen, has to be understood. And I think when you do that, when you take a closer look, you will see that it is a viable option for that affordable housing discussion. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I look forward to your comments later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Before I introduce our next speaker, I did want to remind the audience that we will be making all these slides available. Our next expert is Gretchen West, the Executive Director of Healthy Homes. Healthy Homes is a nonprofit housing organization which was formed through a collaborative efforts of CD4AP, Community Development for All People, and Nationwide Children's Hospital. Since its inception in 2008, Healthy Homes has built or improved over 400 units of affordable housing. Gretchen has been with Healthy Homes since its inception, starting as an AmeriCorps Vista worker. Gretchen also has a master's degree in city and regional planning from The Ohio State University. Please welcome Gretchen West.
Thank you, Robert. I'm going to try to share my screen now. Okay, so hello everyone. Good morning and happy Friday. I'm really excited to be with you all today, and also big thanks to Chris for doing his presentation first and going into detail about the differences between manufactured and modular housing. Again, my name is Gretchen West and I'm the Executive Director of Healthy Homes here in Columbus. Today, I'm going to talk about our experience building modular homes, which we started doing in 2018. So when I was asked to be a part of this panel, I went back in my Facebook feed to see what I had posted the day we set our first ever modular home on Gilbert Street. That day was filled with a lot of excitement. I think at one point we had like 40 people standing around the job site watching giant pieces of our house be lifted from the semi-truck and placed onto the foundation. My Facebook post from that day was this picture with the caption, "We got houses flying in the air." Maybe that's a little dramatic. It's not actual flying. It's more like slow, careful setting into place, but still pretty wild to see in person. Before I take you through how we get to the moment you see in this picture, I want to provide some quick background for those that may not be familiar with Healthy Homes. So the mission of Healthy Homes is to create and preserve affordable housing in two Columbus neighborhoods, the South Side and South Linden. We got our start in 2008 when Nationwide Children's Hospital and Community Development for All People formed a partnership and a new nonprofit that they named Healthy Neighborhoods, Healthy Families Realty Collaborative. And because that is quite the mouthful, we now go by Healthy Homes. Since 2008, we've gone on to impact 400 homes on the South Side, and that's been done through 3 programs. So we have a home ownership program where we buy vacant homes or build new homes and sell them as affordable home ownership opportunities. Home repair grants, where we provide grants up to $20,000 for exterior home improvement on owner-occupied properties. And rental, which is our newest initiative, started in 2016, where we build or rehab homes for affordable rental. So in 2018, working with our partners at Ohio CAP, we raised a combined $20 million, $15 million in loans and $5 million in grants to create the Southside Renaissance Fund. The fund would go on to create 135 units of affordable rental housing on the South Side. And overnight, our geography tripled, and with the clock ticking on our drawdown period on the loan, we began to examine our production process. Up until this point, we were only rehabbing properties for rental, like the one you see here in the picture of 858 Stanley. And with an average of 18 months between acquisition and certificate of occupancy, it became clear that if we stuck to only rehab, we weren't going to meet our timeline. So to speed up production, we looked to new construction for answers. So at a board meeting, one of my board members, Brian Higgins, mentioned modular home building. And to be fair to Brian, it was not the first time he had mentioned it, but in all honesty, every time he brought it up, this is what came up in my mind, a double wide trailer. And so I want to be clear here, I'm not knocking double wide trailers or mobile homes, but I just know that this home would not fit into the aesthetic of the South Side, which is primarily 2-story homes built in the 1920s. But I know that Brian is persistent, and I decided I was going to go to Dayton. I was going to check out the factory. I was going to report back to the board that I did my due diligence, and this wasn't for us. But so obviously I was wrong because I'm here today telling you about it. So a few weeks after the board meeting, me and a few staff members made the trip to Dayton. We started at the model home community, and I still wasn't convinced at that point because the model homes were nice, but they definitely were a suburban style. And then we went to the factory, and that's when everything changed. The factory was super cool. We walked the production line and could see a house coming together in boxes. That day we learned modular has a lot of upsides over stick construction, most of which Chris highlighted in his presentation, but I'll go over them again briefly. So time is a huge consideration. Most homes spend about 4 weeks in the factory. These definitely aren't double wide trailers. Unibuilt has a ton of its own floor plans, but in most cases, we've asked them to create something custom for us so that it fits into the character of the neighborhood. Being built inside a factory means that materials aren't exposed to the elements, and therefore the house is more airtight. And then lastly, Unibuilt uses a lot of environmentally friendly processes, and they recycle just about everything in their plant, so much less waste is created. With the plant tour, I knew we could build a high quality product that would fit into the neighborhood, but there remained a lot of unanswered questions. First, what will it cost, right? Ideally, we're looking for cost savings, but we definitely can't afford to pay a lot more. 2, Will one of our general contractors be willing to jump into this with us and learn modular housing? 3, will the city approve from both a building and a funding standpoint? 4, can I get others on board to see the value in this model, starting with my board, but also funders and neighborhood residents? We all know change is super scary. And lastly, how much will it cost? But really, this whole idea lives and dies based on the final price. So fast forward several months, I was able to convince one of our general contractors, KMM Builders, to help us out with the first model. And they spent a lot of time with Unibuilt, learning the process and crunching numbers. So our first home on Gilbert Street, like I said, it was built in 2018 for $163,000. Anyone who knows the construction industry knows that costs have skyrocketed lately, especially with lumber at all-time highs. So here's our cost in today's numbers for the same model, which is sadly about 20% more. So we call this model the Otis. It's a modest house of 1,259 square feet, 3 beds, 1.5 baths on a full foundation. There are 2 off-street parking spots. And with lumber overages, our current price is around $195, which works out to about $155 per square foot. This total value doesn't include sewer line work, which we have to do about half the time on land bank lots that we purchase, and the moving of power lines. So you'll notice in this picture how high the crane is dropping those boxes onto the foundation. There are sites where we have to pay to have the electric lines moved for the day, so taken down and put back up. And sometimes this can get really expensive, adding up to about $4,000 to the project. Obviously, this is a cost we wouldn't have to pay for stick construction. Overall, though, we feel like the construction numbers are in line, sometimes a little less expensive, sometimes a little more than stick construction. So with the question of cost out of the way, I then had to figure out how to get all the various stakeholders on board. At times like this, I'm really grateful to work for the hospital, particularly hospital leadership who sit on the board. When I proposed a collective field trip to Dayton, everybody was supportive. So using one of the hospital shuttle buses, members of the Healthy Homes Board, staff, leadership from the city and county land bank, and several of the city's aware inspectors joined along. In the end, the factory tour really tends to turn skeptics into believers. I think everyone walked away that day excited by the product. Now we just had to build one. So back to where I started, the setting of our first home on Gilbert Street. The picture on the left is what the site looked like on my way into work that day around 8 a.m. Unibuilt has restrictions on travel time, so they're not able to start transport until after 9 a.m. So the first boxes arrived around 10:30. Here's some more pictures of the 3rd and 4th boxes being placed, and the Unibuilt guys in the last picture putting the roof on. The picture on the left is the view when I drove home from work that night, secure and weather tight. We ended up finishing this home in 91 days, which is the day we started digging the foundation to the certificate of occupancy. This far exceeds the normal 120 to 140 days stick construction can take. Before we leased this home, we had an open house and we invited everyone, current funders, hopeful future funders, partners, neighborhood residents. The president of Unibuilt, Greg Barney, was there to help answer questions about the product, and overall, everyone was surprised by the quality. And we heard over and over again, this was modular. So once we were ready for leasing this unit, it rented quickly for $895 a month. So would you do it again? Overwhelmingly, yes. In fact, we have. Since 2008, we've built 8 more modular homes for home ownership. These are some of the first units built and sold inside the newly created Central Ohio Community Land Trust. And this year, of the 35 new rental units, 21 will be with Unibuilt, including some duplexes and a fully ADA compliant ranch model. We found that duplexes are where we get the best value. Duplexes are a great way to provide general density to neighborhoods. And because it's all one parcel with one tax bill, the operating side of the financials has a lot of advantages. So when I weigh the pros and cons, Here are the pros. So big improvement in construction time, which reduces the need for construction financing, reduced need from our staff to monitor the projects. So we do all of our construction management in-house. And I think my project managers would agree that modular construction takes a lot less of their time on a week-to-week basis. The construction is high quality. The rental unit I showed you on Gilbert Street has now been rented for over a year, and we've had very few maintenance calls from the tenant. Unibuild is able to buy everything and we spec in our units in bulk. We know we're getting the same product in every house. And so we think in the long run, this will mean reduced maintenance costs. With the unit arriving 80% complete, we're able to secure the unit and there's less theft that happens at these job sites comparison to stick construction. And in cases where we need to build a home to accommodate ADA concerns or special lot dimensions, Unibuild has been super easy to work with to make those changes. And right now we're working on 4 single family homes in the middle of February with all this snow, and had these projects started now, there's just no way. And so we're able to keep going even when it's super cold and snowy. So some of the cons, sometimes the cost is a bit higher, like when we have to remove those pesky power lines. 2, we always try to include MBE contractors or subcontractors in our hiring. We're currently working to source an MBE general contractor for some of our modular projects. And then last, some models just don't make sense. Like a Cape Cod, you would have to build out the second floor on site, not in the factory. So in this case, it just makes sense to build those stick construction. Some issues we hope will get better over time. Understanding of the product by subcontractors to improve cost and speed. Utility hookups, because these homes arrive 80% complete and are finished so quickly, there have been times when the utility companies have lagged behind in establishing electric or gas service. This has slowed some of our cold winter month projects a little bit. And then lastly, cost. I know you might be thinking, what world am I living in that costs are going to go down? But we're currently looking at ways we can take this to an even bigger scale. To get the real economies, we would need to provide large, unencumbered commitments of around 50 units. This would allow Unibuild the opportunity to plan production and the purchasing of materials. In the end, we do this because it fits with our mission of providing high quality and affordable housing to families in Columbus. Here's some stats on who we're serving through our rental program. As a children's hospital, we understand that children's health begins at home. Housing and health are very much interlinked, and poor housing conditions can have multiple negative health outcomes. Improving housing conditions and costs can provide multiple benefits like a vaccine can, making safe, quality, and affordable housing one of the most critical contributors to growing up healthy. Modular construction doesn't solve every problem, and I'm not sure there's a solution out there that will, but I do know this method has allowed healthy homes to significantly increase our capacity, and in the end, that means more Columbus families are living in high quality, affordable housing, and that's what it's all about. So that's it. Here's my contact info. I hope I've dispelled a few myths today about modular housing, and I encourage anyone who's interested to make the trip to Dayton to see the Unibuilt factory. I know I probably sound like I'm giving an infomercial for them, but if you're interested, I think it's worth exploring. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gretchen. Our final expert is a senior research analyst for Enterprise's Policy Development and Research team. His research focuses on community development and expanding the supply of affordable housing while bending the cost curve. His recent publications include Proven Local Strategies for Expanding the Supply of Affordable Homes and Addressing Cost Challenges, and Public Benefit from Publicly Owned Parcels, Effective Practices in Affordable Housing Development. He also holds a master's degree in urban planning from the University of Arizona. Please welcome Ahmad Abul Khalaf.
Hi, yeah, I think I'm dealing with some technical issues with sharing my screen, so I'm working on that. Apologies. Oh, okay. I can't even open the Zoom screen. I'm just gonna log out for a second and log in again because I can't even turn my video on. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Ahmad Abu Khalaf, a senior research analyst with Enterprise Community Partners. Enterprise is a national nonprofit housing organization with a mission to make home and community places of pride, power, and belonging. My research portfolio is mainly focused on exploring strategies to expand our supply of affordable housing and also contain the cost of development. Next slide, please. A couple of years ago, Enterprise started a research initiative exploring affordable housing design, policy, and production innovations and strategies that can help us contain the cost of development and also expand our supply of affordable housing. And this research initiative aims to do a couple of things. And one of the key things we were trying to accomplish is by switching the conversation about housing innovations from focusing on individual innovations that, in a way that we would talk about them as if one solution could fix all of our housing issues and significantly change the way we deliver housing in our housing delivery system, toward thinking about the challenges to bringing each innovation to a scale that could help us create more homes and also contain the cost of development. So next slide, please. In 2019, we released a white paper that looks at overcoming challenges to bringing offsite construction to scale. And by offsite construction, we talk about either modular construction, where the whole module is fabricated at a factory and then assembled on the site, or prefab construction, where panels or each construction element is fabricated at a factory, and then all those elements, construction elements, are assembled on the site. And then last year, we published a white paper that looks at accessory dwelling units and how we can overcome challenges to bring ADU development to scale. Next slide, please. So I will start the presentation by talking a little bit about how we can overcome challenges to bringing offsite construction to scale. Next slide, please. As my fellow panelists mentioned earlier in the panel discussion, one of the main key differences between traditional site-built construction and offsite construction is the shorter construction timeline, the expedited construction timeline. However, in our conversations with developers and architects, they emphasize that attaining a shorter construction timeline relies heavily on not facing any significant delays, whether those delays are induced by having lengthy permitting and approval processes or dealing with on-site technical issues that can delay the construction timeline. So this is really important because also the stakeholders we talked to mentioned that attaining any cost savings relies heavily on having an expedited construction timeline because, as my fellow panelists mentioned earlier in the presentation, a shorter development timeline means more affordable financing for the developers. Next slide, please. In our paper, we focused on the opportunities and challenges related to four key aspects. And in this presentation, I will be discussing three aspects: the financing, the regulation and logistics, and the construction timeline and cost aspects. Next slide, please. Financing, because the construction timeline is different, therefore the financing requirements are also different. Most fabricators, they require significant amounts of financing upfront because most of the construction work happens at the factory, at the beginning of the construction timeline, and then the work that is later done on the site, the assembly work, is not as significant and it takes less time. So some fabricators could ask for up to or even more than 50% of the total fabrication cost upfront, and that means that this could create challenges and barriers to smaller developers who might not have that amount of funds upfront for the project. Also, in our conversations with stakeholders, they mentioned that each state has its own codes and regulations when it comes to offsite construction. And while we understand that each state would want to make sure that the modules or the prefabricating construction elements are following their own building codes, but sometimes this process can cause delays because the developer would have to schedule an in-person inspection that happens at the factory, and that might cause some delays while trying to work with the state on getting their a specific agency or a third party to inspect those modules or prefabricated elements. And this is particularly challenging when it happens a situation where the factory where the modules are fabricated is located in one jurisdiction, and then the construction site where the modules will be assembled is located in a different jurisdiction. And then that can create some logistical complications. And then, as I mentioned before, one of the important things about using offsite construction is attaining a shorter construction timeline to attain some cost benefits. However, sometimes there could be some delays that are either induced by some technical issues on the site, because unlike traditional construction, fixing on-site technical issues in construction sites that use modular might be not as easy and more complicated. For example, if you have a multifamily development project with modules, and then you have some alignment issues when you stack those modules on the top of each other, fixing that issue will not be very easy as a task. That might create some additional challenges and increase the cost of development. So this is something that we have to be cautious about, and that is something that might, be less challenging as more developers get more familiar with offsite construction. Next slide, please. As my fellow panelists mentioned, sometimes there are some hidden costs or additional costs that developers will face in using offsite construction. So there's a promising aspect to it by containing the cost of development, but however, sometimes there are some additional costs that can increase the overall development costs. For example, modules can have higher transportation costs because we have additional air volume in the middle that takes more space. The delivery or the shipping cost can be more expensive if the factory is located in one jurisdiction and then the site is located in one jurisdiction. In some cities or counties do not have any factories that create modular or panelized construction elements, and therefore they would have to deal with higher delivery costs. And then there, as I mentioned, sometimes on-site technical issues can create additional development and construction costs, and that could be an issue. Unfortunately, we have yet to see comprehensive data that basically would capture cost savings in offsite construction. We would want to see data sets that compare traditional and offsite construction projects that are similar in size, the uses like multifamily, and more specifically if they serve specific populations like senior housing or deeply subsidized affordable housing, to compare the cost of each type of construction and then identify the actual cost savings attained in offsite construction. And one of the challenges that we identified in our research that sometimes some developers, they're shy about reporting about the projects that do not attain significant offsite construction projects that do not attain cost savings, or the ones that deal with significant delays and challenges. So we would have to also think about ways to incentivize developers to report on the cost of their projects, offsite construction projects, even the ones who are not very successful in attaining cost savings. Next slide, please. So in our research, we talk about innovative solutions to overcome challenges to bringing offsite construction to scale. We talk about how we can help more lenders be more familiar with offsite construction, address some of their issues around seeing offsite construction as a risky investment. And we talk about some recommendations for also identifying the ownership of individual modules. So if the project does not get to the completion line, lenders would know that they would still have the potential ownership of the fabricated modules. Also, we talk about how we can address financing challenges. We talk about how we could potentially think about mission driven capital that can create pools of private capital that can be used as a supplemental form of financing for developers who would want to use offsite construction, but they don't have upfront funds needed to fund the fabrication process upfront, and they would like to use that mission-driven capital to create affordable housing at lower development cost. We also provided some recommendations for states and local jurisdictions on how they can expedite the approval and permitting processes for offsite construction developments, so developers won't be dealing with lengthy processes that can delay and extend the construction timeline. Next slide, please. And then for the second section of the presentation, I will be talking about overcoming challenges to bringing ADU development to scale. Next slide, please. We talk about ADU development as a way to bring smaller units that would be located on sites that already include a single family home on each individual site. And The idea of permitting and allowing for ADU development in single-family zoned area could be the first step towards supporting lower density, which is also known as gentle density. And what this would allow for is basically having smaller units that would be more affordable to either purchase, or, if possible, or rent than existing single family homes. So they would provide, ADUs would provide a more affordable option, housing option in single family zoned neighborhoods. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, there are regulatory challenges to ADU development in many jurisdictions around the country. And we also talk about, in our paper, we talk about how even when land use permits for ADU development, there could be underlying zoning regulations and codes that would either inhibit ADU development or sometimes result in allowing for very small units that might not meet market demand for housing. And also sometimes these regulations can create lengthy and complex permitting processes that would discourage some homeowners from creating accessory dwelling units on their sites. Next slide, please. I will not go through each individual regulatory challenge to ADU development, but some of the common ones are off-site parking requirements, especially excessive parking requirements that would require the homeowner to create additional parking requirements on their site. This could be challenging, especially if the site is not large enough to accommodate new parking spaces, especially if the code asks for 2 parking spaces per each accessory dwelling unit, which is an excessive parking requirement in most markets, especially those that are served by public transportation or alternative transportation models. Also, one of the most prominent challenges to ADU development is minimum lot size requirements and large setbacks as well. A minimum size requirement for the lot, if it's an excessive requirement and most of the sites in a specific neighborhood are on the smaller side, then that would just inhibit ADU development on those sites. And also some jurisdictions, they have excessive setbacks that would result in a very small buildable area on the site, and that might discourage some homeowners from even pursuing creating ADUs on their site. Next slide, please. Also, we talk about restrictive size and height caps that would create units that are small and close in size to micro units, so that those units might not be very suitable for smaller families who might be interested in renting an ADU that could be more affordable to rent than a single family home. And we also talk about impact fees and utility connection costs, which can create some burdens for homeowners, especially lower income and middle income homeowners who are interested in creating an accessory dwelling unit on their site and then potentially renting it to generate additional income. Next slide, please. Also, one of the most prominent challenges to ADU development is access to financing, especially for lower and moderate income homeowners. So our research identified that in most markets, using personal savings, homeowners' personal savings, or tapping into their home equity are the most common ways to finance ADU development. And that creates a lot of challenges for lower income or moderate income homeowners who would like to create accessory dwelling units on their sites, but unfortunately they cannot tap into sufficient home equity or savings. So we would want to identify financing mechanisms that could be more tailored towards ADU development and also towards lower income and moderate income homeowners who could be interested in creating ADUs on their sites and potentially renting them. Next slide. So we in our research, we talk about solutions for overcoming those challenges. We talked about how federal agencies that back mortgages and also private lenders can work together to explore creating ADU financing products that would be more tailored for ADU development and also serve low and moderate income homeowners who are interested in creating ADUs on their lots in better ways, either by offering them better loan terms, lower interest when the interest rate is higher, also allow them to include their projected rental income from the ADU in the debt to income calculations and also appraised value, which would enable more homeowners to access lending products for their ADUs. And also we talked about how different state housing stakeholders can also provide additional support, financial support to low and moderate income homeowners who might be interested in creating rental ADUs that can provide either an affordable market rate rent that is lower than the market rate rent of a single family home in that neighborhood, or also subsidized rentals. And we saw some examples in Los Angeles where nonprofit worked with the city on creating an ADU program that would allow Section 8 voucher holders to rent affordable ADUs in the city. Next slide, please. So I'm interested to reading or hearing your comments later about this presentation. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email me at the email address that appears on the PowerPoint slide. And also please visit Enterprise's website to read those reports and any additional content that is related to this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ahmad. We appreciate your presentation. We will now start the discussion and question portion of our presentation. This first question is for Chris and Gretchen. Obviously, as both of you reiterated in your presentations, homes built using offsite construction seem to have a negative reputation. What has been the experience for both of you as far as what the biggest and most common misconception that you had to encounter, particularly in the communities that you built these homes in, about modular and manufactured housing?
Gretchen, I'll let you go first.
I think it's the points I made in the presentation. So there is a lot of confusion about what modular is, thinking that it's, just a mobile home on a parcel. And so seeing is believing, and that has been the best part, is that when we take folks through or, point out our house, they're unable to tell the difference. And
I would probably follow that up to a lot of the stigma that precedes any kind of conversation about HUD code or modular is always rooted in the experience people have had in their history with mobile homes and even early manufactured homes, lack of understanding what materials are used to build today's offsite built homes and that type of thing. So and Gretchen's a great example, once you open your mind to the possibilities, once you invite the possibility of experiencing something new and different, you go in, you see the materials being used, you see the process, you see the end product, and you start to turn around your thinking saying, okay, this is not what I thought it was, but recognize too that in manufactured offsite built housing, there's a wide spectrum of product from very low end to very high end. And you have to understand exactly what your mission calls for, what you're wanting to accomplish, your goals, and then the kind of specifications that can be applied to whoever is building your home to give you those results. So I think that certainly our past experience tends to be the foundation, no pun intended, but the foundation of stigma and perception of what factory-built housing can provide.
Great, thank you. The next question is for Chris and Gretchen as well, and it's kind of a two-part question. I think both of you mentioned briefly some of the aspects of the actual build of the properties. We were talking about modular and manufactured homes, and you all mentioned that manufactured homes are generally brought in on a crane and a modular is kind of rolled out onto the foundation. First question is, can you all talk a little bit more about some of the other differences between manufactured and modular housing? And the second part of the additional question also is, generally these houses serve particular market segments. Can you talk about what you all have had to deal with particular market segments when it comes to what type of house you build, and if there's any difference between what you put in a property based on whether it's a rental property or a property for home ownership?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. First of all, I want to clarify that modular homes built to the local building code, they are the units that are craned onto a permanent foundation using a foundation with a perimeter load. Manufactured or HUD code are actually rolled onto the foundation and then pier and beam set on a crawl space or a basement, and can be single-story rancher. If you go two-story HUD, then that does require a crane. So I just wanted to make sure that that's part of it. The other part of it is, I think the biggest part is permanent foundations can be under both houses. The elimination of a crane by HUD code homes can represent a significant savings, and you have to make sure that the HUD coded home that you specify for a neighborhood blends in, assimilates with the style of the neighborhood, brings pride to the neighborhood. So there's those kind of things that are important, whether it's modular or manufactured. The manufactured is put on a FHA Title II type permanent foundation. A big difference is that a manufactured home is pier and beam set on that crawl space. The other big difference is because the I-beams stay with a manufactured HUD code homes, the joist depth and the material and the way it's put together is a little bit different. But quite frankly, you could put a modular home and a manufactured home with the same floor plan, same elevation, and even the best professional in the industry couldn't tell the exterior difference until they were maybe to get under the home or pull the wall off. So I hope that helps in the question. Gretchen?
I think one of your questions was like the difference between home ownership and rental spec. It really is, the sky's the limit. Like Unibuilt has a I think it's like 100 pages worth of selections that you can make on a home. And so for the ones that we have built for home ownership, we have tended to do slightly nicer finishes. On the rental side, we're obviously aiming for durability, but it really is just the preference of the end user and owner.
Thank you. The next question is for Ahmad, being our resident research specialist. We thought this would be a great question for you. Obviously, we've seen several examples of innovative and highly efficient house types, but we still don't necessarily see them in abundance in our communities. With the nationwide shortage of housing at all price points, what do you see now as still being the thing that's holding communities and governments back from embracing these different types of build models?
That's a great question. I think, as I mentioned, on the industrial side, when it comes to developers, there are specific challenges that continue to prevent them from using modular and prefab construction at scale, and mainly the financing part for smaller developers. We've seen some more successful models with fabricators who have their own teams, their own design teams, engineering teams, and then they have sufficient financing to finance the fabrication process. So having their own in-house teams and expertise and financial resources would allow those bigger developers with their own fabrication sites to navigate the world of site construction. However, for smaller developers who might not have the necessary upfront costs for covering the cost of the fabrication process, this is a challenge. I would say for jurisdictions, they would just have to sometimes amend their own regulations and codes governing off-site construction, as I mentioned before, whether it's expediting their permitting and review processes, and the at factory inspections make them easier. And now we see a lot of processes going virtual or having some different form. And I would say at the end of the day, it's about overcoming some of the persistent challenges like financing and regulatory challenges, and also getting more developers to the point where they're more familiar with the process. They're able to avoid having on-site technical issues that could delay the process, and having more fabricators in I would say on a regional level to be able to mitigate any shipping costs that could be higher. So I would say there are a bunch of things and actions that could be taken to bring off-site construction to scale, and each stakeholder can at least do a couple of things to get us to that point.
Thank you. And Ahmad, to piggyback off that question, can you share an example or two of any communities that you are familiar with that were able to do these types of homes at scale? And can you give a little bit of background on maybe what was in place for them that helped them be successful, and any of the challenges that they may have had that were unique to them that you had to overcome in order to bring those communities to scale with these types of builds?
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind, and we highlight that in our research, is that some regions or states, like we would talk about how California has a number of off-site construction factories, and also the state of Washington, they have a couple of factories or fabrication tech firms who are invested in supporting modular and off-site construction. So that helps just accessing factories and innovative partners who are willing to invest in off-site construction. That helps a lot. Also, I've seen a couple of examples on how governments can incentivize or try to boost the use of off-site construction. A couple of years ago, the city of New York issued request for proposals for an affordable housing development, requiring that the developer uses off-site construction on the site. And this by itself is an action that would incentivize and encourage developers to experiment with using off-site construction. So this is also another example. About accessory dwelling units, the state of California a couple of years ago did a bunch of legislative changes to support and boost the use of accessory dwelling units. That included some really important changes, whether lowering the minimum parking requirements for accessory dwelling units, having minimum requirements for the ADU size. So they would not, local jurisdictions and the state would not require homeowners to create very small ADUs that might not be suitable for smaller families or whoever would be interested in renting ADUs. And also one of the innovative changes that the state of California pursued is allowing for more than one accessory dwelling unit on specific sites. I think this was the first time we see a state allow, I could be wrong, but I believe it's the first time we see a state allow for more than one ADU on one site. And we've seen some spikes in the use of ADUs as affordable rentals on the West Coast and more specifically in California. And I just hope to see more jurisdictions revise their own regulations to allow for more ADU development, which can help expand affordable housing options in single family zoned neighborhoods.
Thank you. In listening to everyone's presentation, to me, the overall theme was, yes, this type of build may save funds and construction costs, but one of the big advantages seems to be the ability to build more houses in a shorter period of time, which helps reduce how many units we need to build. With that in mind, what are some of the challenges that you all have seen now that those units are coming online? Are there any challenges that your buyers are seeing from buying these manufactured or modular homes when they go to the bank to get their loans or anything like that? I know we touched briefly on appraisal and value of the homes, but what does that mean for the end buyer when they go to try to purchase one of these homes? And that question is for either Chris or Gretchen. My apologies.
Okay. No, that's all right. I think part of the challenge has always been appraisals and trying to understand exactly what the product is. The product behind me is something that Fannie Mae calls MH Advantage qualifying home, built in a HUD code. So Fannie and Freddie have been working with the Appraisal Institute and trying to get appraisers more familiar with the HUD code product, in order to allow or provide fairer appraisals, even to the point where if manufactured housing comps are not available, they're allowed now to use site build comps. So we're seeing more accurate appraisals and that type of thing. Modular housing, and Gretchen can speak to this, modular housing for home ownership falls under the same guidelines as a site-built home. So there's far fewer regulations and more mortgages or financing available for someone wanting to buy a modular home than exists presently for HUD code homes. And that is rapidly changing as the landscape in affordable housing changes, and the products by Fannie for manufactured housing is certainly allowing home buyers a greater assortment of lending products that they can use to finance their homes. So Gretchen may have some additional information on this.
Not a ton to report. We haven't had any issues on either refinancing our properties with our loan fund or any issues selling those homes inside the land trust. So all of those homes went into contract before they were finished being constructed, and the land trust technically handles the sales process, but they didn't report any sort of issues with those buyers being able to obtain a mortgage.
Okay. You all are on this panel because you've kind of been on the cutting edge and being innovative and looking at building processes and trying to advance that. Do you all have any other suggestions or ideas of innovation that we need to look into to advance our goal of creating more affordable housing units? And that's for any of you all to answer.
Some of the things that I'm seeing that is very interesting is the use of land trusts in controlling the cost of land. I know in Central Ohio, for example, land costs are quite expensive and can drive up the cost of affordable housing. So that seems to be a very interesting development, especially in larger municipalities, that land costs seem to be out of reach at sometimes. The other part of it, as HUD relaxes some of the regulations associated around HUD code housing, you're seeing more options. You're seeing greater possibilities of 1 and 2 story construction on basements, on crawl spaces. So that's an interesting development and innovation on that. I think that certainly the exterior design and materials being used today in all offsite built housing is finding innovation is a basis for how they are able to bring high quality, high value to offsite built houses that are then relocated and put into a municipality. So there's so much going on, and I kind of relate that real quickly to times when the trusses to build a roof were built on site. It wasn't too long ago that we were hanging doors on site. We were glazing windows back in the 1900s to on site. So now those components and many more, joists and other things, are being built in factories and transported to site. So I think keeping an open mind, understanding what your project demands and the options available, I think is a key component of this. And then understanding exactly how you can take advantage of offsite built housing to meet your affordable housing demand and needs. So
thank you. Well, as a final question to wrap up our presentation today, what would you all offer as a piece of advice for anyone on this call who's looking for a first step or call to action if they were to want to dip their toe in the modular and manufactured housing arena as to advance that idea or effort in their own communities?
I can jump in and answer this question quickly. I think one of the most interesting things that I've seen over the past couple of years is an effort by New York City where they organized a number of roundtable discussions with affordable housing and market rate housing stakeholders to discuss how the city working with those partners can boost the use of site construction and modular construction in the city. I think that's for jurisdictions who are interested in finding ways to support the use of site construction. I think that's a great start, having roundtable discussions with partners on the ground, whether they are nonprofit organizations working to expand the supply of affordable homes or developers, investors, all of those partners just getting on the same table and discussing the challenges and what are the solutions that could help them overcome challenges to bringing offsite construction to scale. I think that that would be a good first step.
I would just say that understand what you want and what you expect. I would suggest that you understand the product thoroughly and the capabilities of your builder, regardless of whether you go HUD or mod, and then stick to your guns, because within 5 hours, 4.5 hours of the city of Columbus, there are 5 manufacturers or home builders that can build HUD code homes like the ones behind me. And then when you look at mods, there's an additional 3 or 4 manufacturers and home builders for mod. So understand the product, understand what you want, understand what your goals are, align yourself with the right people that you can trust to deliver on the promise, and then move forward with an open mind.
I would agree with Chris. And like I said before, Unibuilt has, I think, weekly tours on Saturday of their factory. So it's 45 minutes up the road. Anybody's welcome. I think they're smaller groups now because of COVID, but seeing the factory changed my mind, and I think it would for most folks.
Right. Well, Gretchen, Chris, and Maud, thank you very much for your time today. Your presentations were great. There was a lot of useful knowledge in there, and I hope that everyone watching learned a lot more about manufactured and modular homes and the practice, and see the viability and the value in that. Our next panel will take place on Friday, April 30th from 11 to 12:30, and that topic will be flexibility and regulations in zoning. So once again, thanks to our panelists, and everyone have a great afternoon and enjoy your weekends.